able to help the Latino community that really don't comprehend why it's important to create a trust for their home. Just an example, you don't have a living trust, you pass away, and now your kids have to experience the probate. Hey everyone, this is Raina Carrillo with Purpose and Passion. I'm really excited today because I have a beautiful Latina in the building by the name of Teresa Gutierrez. And you know what? I had so much comments about helping people with their homes from the last episode, but I also wanted to give other, opinions and thoughts on people saving their homes, whether it's a will, a living trust, and things of that nature. So I'm really excited to have you here today on Purpose and Passion. You're a lawyer, you're Latina, how amazing, and then you do the California wills, the living trust, probate, and legal guardianship. Correct. So I'm excited to have you here.
I'm excited to be here.
In the great city of Inglewood.
Yes, Inglewood.
And today we did coordinate. I ain't gonna lie. I was like, what color are you gonna wear? She was like, purple. I love purple because it represents royalty. So I had to make sure I had my purple on today.
That purple.
Yes.
Love it.
So, would our viewers take our viewers down memory lane? Like, where are your parents from? Where were you born and raised? And how was your childhood?
For sure. So, gosh, let's see. I haven't been asked that in a minute, but it's good. It's good because that's where it all started. So, my parents, I'm of Mexican descent. Mm-hmm. So my father was from a place called Zacatecas. Yay! Out in Mexico. May his soul rest in peace. He's no longer with us. My mother was born in Mexicali. They had very different stories. My father grew up primarily in Mexico, but he came here as a young adult, 17, 18, versus my mother was born in Mexicali. And then her family immigrated here when she was just months old. So she has that experience of going to the school systems here in California, but also in Mexico too, because my grandfather was a business owner. He had restaurants, bakeries, so they would go back and forth. And myself, I was born in San Pedro, California. Okay. So here, South Bay as well, not that far, yes, right? Down the 110, down the 110.
Can't miss it.
Yeah. And, with respect to my upbringing, I was born and raised, in San Pedro in this immigrant family. Yes. My parents were very hardworking folks. They instilled that hard work in my siblings and I, from a very young age. That's what I remember. Obviously always seeing, my both of my parents working to maintain our household, and to educate us really the best that they could. And more so really instill values in us, I think, to, be good people and hard workers. And I think that just really shows, and that's really helped me, in everything I've set out to do in my life.
Yes.
Looking back, that deeply influenced me, how I was raised by them.
That, when I was thinking about your dad, I was thinking about entrepreneurship. You know what I mean? Like, he's already a businessman. And bakery, restaurants, like that is big in Mexico, very big. What part of Zacatecas was he from?
He was from a little ranch called La Loma, which is specifically, as I understand it, nestled somewhere between Jerez and Colotlan. So that region. And, I was fortunate enough during his lifetime to make a few trips out there. I think those type of trips can be very humbling,
Yes.
I think they really help us. It's twofold. I think it helps us appreciate our life here in the United States, the opportunities we have if we take advantage of them. But then also seeing how other people live, seeing where we come from, understanding our culture a little bit better.
Yeah.
So I maybe took about 3 or 4 trips to Zacatecas during his lifetime. The last one being when I was 23. I was at USC at the time. And I spent part of my summer vacation out there with him. I'm now 40. I think that's the last time I went.
Yes.
And then I've also visited Guadalajara, Mexico, which is where, a lot of my mom's family ended up. So really neat experiences. And then I've obviously had travel opportunities along the way too, while I was at USC. And really, I think it's so important. Like, if there's one thing I could tell young people, if you have the opportunity, get out there, travel, it really builds character.
It really does. You know what's my story is my dad is from Zacatecas, but from Apaso. And I didn't speak Spanish. And my dad would tell me, if you just go for a summer with your tia Elena out there, you're going to come back speaking Spanish. But people in California will always say, you're going to get kidnapped. You know, it's always something
Right.
bad about a drug cartel or whatever, right? And I was just paranoid. So I never went. So I went as an adult. And I just remember, going to San Diego to take go to the airport there to Guadalajara, and then taking the taxi cab all the way through Jalisco to Zacatecas. And you are correct when you talk about it humbles you, because sometimes us Americans, when I reflect on us, like it doesn't matter what color, it's just in general, we're very spoiled. We have so much opportunity at our hand that we're just so spoiled that we don't take advantage of it. So when you have people that come from other countries, when they get here, it's like go time. And so I reflect on myself like, wow, like, my family came from Mexico to California for a better opportunity. And I'm over here, you know, I went to, elementary, everything was fine. But when I got into the sixth grade, you get into the gang culture, right? And now that I'm older, I reflect like, why would I enter that lifestyle when my family came here for a better opportunity and a lifestyle for us, right? And obviously now, my grandparents are gone, so we're their descendants. And so we reflect on that. And I said to myself, like, eventually, I want to change my life. And then I went into, working with the community doing gang intervention to running for mayor of Inglewood last year. So it's
Mm.
like now I know what my purpose and passion is now. And now here I am with a freaking podcast with Luxe Media Studios. You know what I mean? And it's a dream
Yeah.
come true because I'm literally here in the city of Inglewood where I'm born and raised. And so hearing your story about that, being humble and knowing where our roots are in our culture, it's definitely like I know for sure I plan to take my children there at a young age, so then they can experience what I experienced, what I wish I would have experienced back then when I was a teenager. So I so regret it. So I'm happy that you got there, to be there, 3 times, and that's a beautiful thing. And it's beautiful just to hear, your story. I love
Yeah.
it. I love it because it's culture. You know what I
Right.
mean? I'm gonna tell you something. When I ate there, the food was so delicious. It
Right.
wasn't the avocados did not taste like the avocados over here.
Yeah, everything's so fresh. I have a lot of
It's
fond
amazing.
memories about the food too.
Yeah.
Tacos, breakfast, lunch, and dinner.
Yes. I'm like,
um,
wow.
but no, it's a beautiful experience. I mean, and as to your point, those teenagers are hard, I think, for anybody, Reina. But
Yes.
to see everything you've accomplished from then to now is just
Yes.
phenomenal. You should
Thank
be proud.
you.
And I think many of us, yeah, when we're young, we go through that, wanting to fit in, trying to
Yes.
find ourselves,
Identity.
and we
Sheesh.
just end up taking our own paths. But I think
Yeah.
ultimately we end up where we're supposed to be, as
The
you
right
have
track,
here.
right?
Yes.
Man. So, when you were in high school, what was your dream job?
Sure, sure. When I was in high school, I would say I was kind of like a little Rolling Stone. If I,
Okay, I like it.
yeah,
Give us the
yeah.
story behind that Rolling Stone.
You know what? I was. It's a really interesting time looking back. Right,
Mhm.
I would get told by teachers like, "You're smart." I remember being in an English class in ninth grade specifically, um, and it was kind of strange to me because I wasn't fully applying myself, but on like our tests and exams, somehow I was always like the top performer.
Mhm.
And then this teacher, I won't say her name, she's retired now, but like on the chalkboard, she would put like the highest score and then like the medium, the lowest. And then like there'd be this outlier out there with like a super high score. And then that was
Yes.
me. And then the class would be like, what's going on? Um, so I always knew if I applied myself,
Mhm.
I had certain strengths, and I think one of those strengths that really didn't get nurtured until later because I didn't have, like my parents that had gone to college or
Yes.
anything in my immediate anybody in my immediate surrounding, that maybe saw that potential, but it was
Mhm.
other people seeing it. And I came to learn way later in life that, actually reading and writing was a strength of mine.
Yes.
This daughter, of immigrants that whose parents didn't go to college, but were very hardworking and instilled in her
Yes.
other skills. So just there were kind of these little reminders and hints throughout, like, hey, you have some potential in you,
Yes.
but I hadn't tapped into it in high school. I hadn't. I was just
Yeah.
kind of, when I say like a little rolling stone, I was just going with the flow.
Yes.
I was
Okay.
going to
Okay.
my
I
classes.
thought you were like a rebel or something
Yeah.
back then.
Well, I guess in my
You remember
own,
the greasers, right?
Yeah.
Okay, that's what I was like. Okay.
yeah, I guess maybe in my own right, I kind of was. What I mean by that is I started working very young, actually,
Oh,
Reina.
wow. What age?
I was in 7th grade. I was barely about 13, maybe younger.
Wow.
So maybe because of my height, we discussed this before we started talking. I'm like 5'9", right? So I think when I was younger, I looked older. So I have
Yes.
a sister that's 4 years older than me, and people used to always think I was the older one, even though we're both tall. Like people
Yes.
just thought, oh, she has to be the older one, but I wasn't. So what happened is she had started working her first job at an ice cream shop, and her boss would always see me when my mom and I would go pick her up, and eventually he's like, does your sister want a job? And she's like, dude, she's in junior high,
Yeah.
And I really didn't have a need for it at that time, but I just said, why not? Why not? What else am I doing? So,
Yes.
so I got a special permit from my middle school. We did it the right way. So I went, got a permit. There I was in 7th grade working at the local ice cream shop. But looking back, I think it's those type of experiences that I took on that kept me out of trouble. Because I'll tell you,
Special permit.
there were middle schoolers, at the Taco Bell next door, doing
Mhm.
drugs. And then here I was like rushing from after school to get to my job.
Yes.
And that would keep me there until maybe 9 or 10 p.m.
Mhm.
And then I would still go home, do my homework. So
Wow.
that pretty much ran from 7th grade. So I was doing junior high all the way through high school. I worked all the way through high school. So was I that like 4.0 student? No, I was not.
Yeah.
Was I, the one taking AP classes, SATs and all that? No. But I was getting by. I was getting through.
Mhm.
And then my senior year, I'll never forget, we had a visit from the local community college.
Yes.
And his name was Robbie. We still connect every now and then, but Robbie came, and I guess he was working through the GPA list of the folks that maybe weren't going to like the 4-year, but we
Yes.
weren't necessarily failing, but there was
Yes. In the
something there.
middle.
We were
The
somewhere.
junior college list.
Yeah, exactly. Precisely. So he called me in there and we talked about it. And he's like, you can, what are your thoughts after high school? It's like, yeah, I don't know. Like,
Yeah.
I'm gonna do something, but I don't know what I'm gonna do,
Yes.
So he started explaining to me the process of, maybe starting at a community college, transferring to a 4-year. And I think that just kind of lit this fire within, because after that, it was like game over. Like after
Yes.
that point, after I took that path, I never looked back. So that summer, I remember summer 2001, I enrolled in LA Harbor College in Wilmington.
Mhm.
That's where I had my start. And I met up with the academic honors counselor there. And right away that summer, I started taking some math, English classes. And I set off on this plan to just get in there and out of there within 2 years.
Yes.
And then I set the goal, like, you know what? If I'm going to do this, I kind of want to do it semi big,
Yes, of course.
So I said, I want to go to UCLA or USC. And then it turned out I did end up getting into both. And then
Wow.
ultimately, I'll never forget when I got that admit letter from USC. I was working and stuff. So I had gone to the bank at the ATM. I'll never forget. I had a little Honda CRX. I pulled up at the ATM, and I had just gone to the post office, and it was, you knew it was something good because it was one of those nice big,
Yes.
envelopes.
Yes.
And I opened it up, and it was an admission letter, and I was so excited. I locked the keys in the car. I was just so.
That sounds something that I would do.
Yeah, I was so just overcome, with happiness. So many things, It was
Yes.
one of those first big milestones.
Wow, that's awesome.
And so, in high school, didn't really have a plan,
Yes.
so to speak. But I started making a plan, and as you learn in these things, the plan just kind of starts unfolding.
Yeah, like a domino, right? Like
Yeah.
it just lines up like one blessing after another.
Yeah.
So how was it at USC? Because I know eventually I want to go there for my master's program.
For sure.
But I love the place. Just looking on the outskirts, it's so beautiful. The bricks. Like, I'm not a fan of the sports.
Sure.
I'm more of a Bruin fan. But I just want to go to USC. And then I heard they have, when you graduate, the alumni, like the networking is amazing. So I'm
Yeah.
like, man.
Yeah. USC is definitely known for its just kind of vast, large network. For sure. UCLA, don't get me wrong, phenomenal school
Mm-hmm.
as well. I would
Yeah.
never downplay that.
Yes.
They have a lot of academic, athletic strength too. Ultimately, I think what it had boiled down to for me, it was a huge culture shock. I'll say that
Yes.
much. Transitioning from the 2-year college to the 4-year school, and then just maybe not having had that preparation in high school or even before,
Yes, I
right?
hear
A lot
you.
of my peers, and hats off to them, just different backgrounds. I'll never shame anybody from,
Yeah.
having different background than my own, but that preparedness really goes a long way.
Yes.
So I think when I got to USC, I was just kind of slammed with the reality, the situation of truly, truly being independent when it comes to studying. And
Yes.
okay, this is the assignment, but what do I do with it? Right. So it was like
Yeah.
my first semester was tough. It really was. I remember I didn't know a whole lot of people. I did have a good friend from high school there, and we're actually really great friends now. She's actually a lawyer too.
Nice. What kind of lawyer? I'm just nosy.
Yeah, she does bankruptcy and immigration, Latina.
Ah, okay.
Yeah, amazing, amazing person. We've been good friends. Great mentor to me. But so she was there. So she had started there before me, and then I had another friend from high school that had ended up there. So I at least had,
Yes.
a few people I knew that were introducing me to their networks and their circle of friends. So I'll say I was a non-traditional student, right? Because I didn't have the whole dorm experience.
Yes.
And I was still working. So at times I felt like, who am I? Do I belong here? So it was really about, grounding myself. And yes, you do. You have a different experience, different perspective, but you do belong here. You have a lot to add. And after that first semester, things got better. I found, my people,
Your tribe,
my tribe,
right?
exactly. My
and you were
support
more
system.
settled in, right?
Exactly. And I did finish. So I remember my parents that, they were worried, watching me, transition into this environment and watching me, do my best to make it. But, ultimately they were very, very proud. When I finished there in, I think it was 2005 or 6.
So what was your degree there?
Yeah.
Like, what was your major and minor?
Yeah. So I'll tell you, when I set out on the path to higher education, I really saw myself as wanting to go into the social work or psychology arena, the helping areas, right? That's what I wanted to do. That's what I set out to do. So when I went to USC, I came in as a psychology major.
Okay.
And, USC being a really, really strong business school, we have the Marshall School of Business. I said, I want to do something business, like, because I'm here, I'm at USC. So, people thought I was nuts adding all this stuff, but I added a business minor. So I did get to take classes in the business school, counting, all of that, and go to school alongside all these brilliant folks. So I really enjoyed that. I think it really challenged, my way of thinking. So I love that. And then somewhere in between my time at USC, I got this bright idea, going back to the whole traveling and getting cultured and getting out there. I can sometimes be introverted and quiet, but I think I'm also deep down, someone that's adventurous. So I ended up doing a semester abroad in Spain while I was at USC.
Wow.
Yeah.
Viewers, did you hear that? She said Spain. She didn't say San Diego.
Right.
Santa Barbara. You said Spain.
Spain.
That's like my cousin Jesse Carrillo. He lived in Spain too. And it's so beautiful over there. So how was that experience?
Yeah, no, it was awesome. Well, the first hurdle was, how was I going to get there? How was I going to finance that? But that's another story.
Yes.
And then sharing that like with my family and whatnot. So obviously my parents, bless them both, they were always very supportive. They never, even though they didn't have these same experiences or opportunities, when they would come my way, never once do I recall them saying, you can't do it, don't do it. Maybe deep down they were wondering, like, my mom would say, where did she get this from? But a little scared. And I would tell people that. They're like, well, your parents are immigrants. They're like, strong people. They're adventurous people. That's where you get it from. I would have counselors tell me that. And even, my father, you think, okay, this immigrant from this little ranchito in Mexico, probably super, antiquated, old fashioned. No, he was always like, go. Like, yeah, do it. You know, mija muy, excuse my language,
Yeah.
chingona. He would
Yeah,
tell me, me
uh-huh.
saliste bien chingona. Every time I would get a scholarship, he'd be like, you know, elated.
I
Like,
remember I had to knock on when I was knocking on the door for canvassing. They were saying that, and I was googling. It's like, oh yeah, that's me. I'm a strong woman.
yeah, he would straight up tell me that. And it was actually, so it was never my parents that held me back. It was more extended family that would turn around and tell my father, "You're going to let her go to Spain?" And he's like, "It's not my choice.
Yeah.
It's her choice." So that was really interesting. But Spain was awesome. Yeah, I mean, once I got out there, obviously all the classes were in Spanish, and I'm a native Spanish speaker, right?
Yes, yes,
I
yes.
grew up in my home
So I
speaking it.
wouldn't survive there then.
Yeah, well, so here's the interesting thing, Reina. So, you know, obviously in LA, we're a very diverse community, right?
Yeah.
We have all different types of Latinos, Mexicans, Central Americans, South Americans. I mean, you
Yes.
name it, right? And even amongst ourselves, the dialect is different.
Yes, it is.
Some words
Yes,
mean
yes.
different things. So you go to Spain, the quote unquote motherland,
Yes.
right? This
The original language Spanish,
yeah,
right?
this Mexican American, you know, from LA who learned Spanish in our house.
Yes.
So a lot of the commentary there from my professors was, your Spanish is very colloquial. Another word for ghetto, hood.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Yes.
know?
It's broken Spanish.
Correct.
Yes.
However, interestingly, it was still strong enough that they said, you know what? But you kind of know too much. They said, so what you're gonna do is you're not gonna come to class. I was like, what? They're like, yeah, you're going to read books and newspapers and you're going to write reports. So I was like, okay. So,
wow. Okay.
So it was really independent study. Yeah, I would go to class, you know, check in here and there, but I was doing my reports and really, Reina, even though I had in mind I was just going to Spain, I ended up traveling to so many other places in
Please
Europe.
Tell me.
Yeah.
I've never traveled. So I'm like, I want to drink through you. So tell me where you've been.
For sure. And this is thanks to my peers, you know, that were, they had a whole different mindset than I did. You know, that was all rubbing off on me. And I said, yeah, you know, they're right. You know, we're here overseas. Who knows when we're coming back?
Yes.
You know, you're never going to find a flight this cheap to Portugal or France, you know, here, in comparison to like if you do it from the States, right?
From like LAX, then it's expensive.
I mean, so, and I know that now. Back then, I was just kind of like, So Spain. I was living in Madrid, and then I ended up going to Portugal. Mm-hmm. We went to France. We went to Amsterdam, the Czech Republic.
Wow.
Ireland. I mean,
that sounds like my DNA
from
Ancestry.com.
Pretty much. It was a beautiful time. You know, we would take these little weekend trips here and there because everything was close enough. It was very economical. And, you know, we did it on a budget, you know, there we were, you know, no kids, living our best lives. Yes. You know, staying in hostels. It was an awesome experience.
Wow,
I love it
that's
so much.
Beautiful.
Believing Before Seeing, a new book by Candace Barr, teaching you how to believe into existence. Available now for pre-order.
So, you know, after you graduated from college, did you do the traditions, you know, for it's also an American dream, but even for the Latinos, like right after college, did you get married? Did you have kids? You know, does the lawyer come after family or before family, you know? Like,
yeah. No, that's a great question. I mean, you're right. I think in the Latino community, family is very important. Yes. That's definitely very important to me. You know, but I think that means different things for different people. Yes, right? Yes, especially as a lot of folks that are educated or have different paths. You just kind of go down different roads, right? So I think even to talking to my peers right now in the law, I know it means different things for different people. But for me, I can't really say I had that on my mind, like marriage and things like that when I was 21, 22, when I was finishing USC. And again, I was a very, you know, non-traditional person, right? Yes. You know, I ended up at USC, but it's like not because I had this crazy SAT. Yeah, don't get me wrong, very hard work, absolutely. But it was different, you know. And then even once there, I wasn't dorming, you know, I was still working, I was renting an apartment, so it was still a very different experience. And I'll tell you, by the time I finished USC, I had already kind of had a change of perspective in terms of the career path. I was no longer at that point. My last year, I was no longer wanting to do like social work psychology. At that point, I had already decided on the law. But
Nice.
I knew that I just wasn't mentally ready, financially ready to go straight from undergrad
Yes.
to the law school environment. I just wasn't. I was already looking into the law school admissions test,
Mm.
and just other steps that had to be taken, but I wasn't ready. So ultimately, I decided to join the workforce for some time. So I worked on a congressional campaign a little bit. I was always very interested in seeing what lawyers did with their law degrees, not just in a law firm
Yes.
setting, but outside of that setting, and just really learning about the versatility of the degree. And I said, okay, if after I work for a few years, if I still want to do this thing called the
Yes.
law, I'll go back and do it. But really, what kind of the impetus for going into the law, back to the strong writing skills, right? I took a
Mm-hmm.
legal writing class when I was at USC. And that same semester, I was out there renting an apartment for the first time on my own. It was right before Spain. I was supposed to go. The lease had ended.
Yes.
Long story short, I had a really interesting experience with that landlord. With respect to him honoring his contractual, commitment and returning deposits and all those things. So all that to say, in that interaction I had with the landlord, I ended up writing a demand letter, which I had learned how to do in my legal writing class.
Wow.
And then through that experience, I got my deposit back. And I was like, oh, okay. And then the wheels just started turning. And I said, okay, you can think for yourself, you can advocate for yourself.
Nice.
Maybe you can use that. That's going to be your way of helping people.
Mm-hmm.
And then that's really when I started thinking more about law. I want to go to law school.
Wow.
I'm going to be an attorney. So yeah, I worked for a congressional campaign, and then I lived in Washington, D.C. for some time too, working out there on Capitol Hill. Another very character building experience, I'll say that much. But ultimately made my way back to California. I was working at a local legal nonprofit too, just getting all that experience. And around that time when I came back, my father started getting sick.
Yes.
So I was still prepping for like the law school admission test. I was putting some money aside, doing what I had to do to hopefully get ready for that first year of law school. And ultimately, I did. I ended up, I did the LSAT. I think it ended up being 5 years after USC, which a lot of people are like, are you sure you're going to take that break? Most people that say they're taking a break and they're going to go back to school, they don't go back to school. But I'm like, I kind of know me. Like, if I really want something, I'm going to do it. Like, I know me. So I did it. And yeah, at that point, still no family. But I did have, I've never been married, but I did have my daughter my third year of law school.
Yes.
So I was already 31 by the time she came. So that was a really interesting experience too. So my whole third year of law school's 3 years, I was pregnant that whole third year.
Wow.
So it was a lot of risk, because I thought, there's so many things out of your control when you're pregnant, right? I had people tell me, even law professors there, like, oh, when I was pregnant, I had a preeclampsia, I had to be bedridden. You just never know what's going to happen with your pregnancy. Thankfully, with my little girl, my one and only little girl, it was a very healthy pregnancy. Was I tired? You better believe it. But somehow, some way, it ended up being my heaviest semester ever. I had like 17 units of law classes.
Yes.
I was doing an internship at the district attorney's office. I had a job at an employment firm. Looking back, I'm like, how did you do that?
All of that.
Like, I really don't know. I was on one of the law reviews, the International Comparative Law Review, on the editorial board. I was the chief justice of the Scott Moot Court Honors Board. I mean, I was really looking back, like bringing it.
Man.
That third year, I really was. I was really determined. I would say probably the heartbreaking part of that third year is my father was still sick, battling. He had heart conditions.
Yes.
And I remember him telling me, oh, I pray to God that, I'll be able to watch you graduate. That was like his thing. And unfortunately, he didn't make it. Make it. So he passed between my second and third year of law school. And actually, my daughter was born like within the year. It's really crazy. But all that to say, his passing kind of really impacted my choice of law that I would practice ultimately, which is the wills, trust, probate, and estate planning, because I learned through that experience of him passing away intestate, without a plan, really how important these issues are about planning and having these
Yes.
conversations with our communities. No matter where we come from, no matter how small we might think our estates are, we all have someone to protect,
Mm-hmm.
and that's different for everybody. So,
Yes.
my experience with my father led me down that path.
Wow. Man, so I want to hear your perspective as a lawyer, right? So, can you explain to the viewers, you know, I'm going to start with the legal guardianship.
Mhm.
I'm going to start with that. So, explain to the viewers and myself what is a legal guardianship? And the reason why I ask is because I have a son that is autistic. And somebody told me that I have to go to court before he turns 18 to have guardianship over my son. So I'm trying to figure out, is this the legal guardianship or the legal guardianship is something else?
Sure.
So it's all about educating, empowering, teaching, awareness on purpose and passion.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I would say with anything, education is always that first step,
Yes.
so that we're going into any situation with eyes open, and then what path we choose to take thereafter, right,
Yes.
is our own, but it's about empowerment.
Mhm.
So yes, legal guardianships, great question. So I think it's a little different in every state, but with respect to California, when you have a parent, so using myself as an example and my daughter, just by her naturally being my child,
Yes.
I am her legal guardian, right?
Mhm.
She is my child. So you look at school documents, medical documents, you often see on that signature line, parent or legal guardian,
Yes.
parent or legal guardian, right? So what's the distinction between the two? Well, I mean, heaven forbid, but let's say I'm ever unable to care for my child, my daughter, because either I'm incapacitated, right? We
Mhm.
had a lot of people these last few years, unfortunately, with COVID, right?
Yes.
Being incapacitated on a short-term, long-term basis. Some folks, rest their souls, never, returned
Yes.
to normal, or any other number of things. Incarceration, which also affects our community a great
Mhm.
deal. Substance abuse. Maybe
Yes.
there's, substance abuse issue that a parent is working through that keeps them from being able to care for their child. So there's something keeping mom and or dad, bio mom or dad, from being able to care for the child.
Mhm.
Deportation. I work with a lot of kids
Okay.
whose parents are not here physically
Yes.
with them, right? But these kids are young. They're still school-age children. They need somebody that can protect them on the day-to-day, somebody that can make educational decisions for them or
Mhm.
medical decisions, right? So for those kids, we usually institute a legal guardianship. So we have
Okay.
somebody other than mom or dad,
Mhm.
oftentimes a grandparent, sometimes an aunt, an uncle, a family friend,
Mhm.
who's willing to go on paper and before the court and say, you know what, I want to petition to be the legal guardian of this child until his or her 18th birthday.
Yes.
And when that happens, so very different from, let's say, an adoption.
Mhm.
Okay, let's focus on guardianship for a minute. When a guardianship is established by the court, it is a court process. It suspends the original parent's rights
Okay.
during the time of the guardianship,
Mhm.
right? So maybe we establish guardianship at age 13, and then at 14 or 15, mom and dad are okay. If mom and dad show that they're okay, the guardianship can be terminated,
Okay.
and then the guardian's rights go away, and
Mhm.
then the parents' rights are kind of reinstituted.
Mhm.
I would say more often than not, that doesn't happen,
Yeah.
right? An absent parent usually does not all of a sudden overnight become a present parent,
Yes.
sadly.
Yeah.
So in most of my cases that I've done, the guardianship runs well
To 18.
throughout through the 18th birthday.
Wow.
Exactly. But again, it just suspends the parental rights. So when we think about inheritance rights, those
Mhm.
kids who have a guardianship instituted, they could still inherit from mom or dad
Yes.
because the parental rights were never terminated. Like,
Mhm.
let's say they might be in an adoption,
Yeah.
right? So that's where they're different. Now, as to your question, with someone that might have a child that has needs like
Mhm.
autism or something else, um, I think maybe what the agency you were dealing with was trying to communicate to you was that there might be a need for what we call a conservatorship.
That's the word.
which
Yes.
in some states right now, they do refer to it as guardianship. So it just really
Mm-hmm.
depends on the jurisdiction. But in California, once the person turns 18 and they're in need of some sort of caregiver, either on the day-to-day or medical side or the
Yes.
financial side or both, we call it conservatorship.
Okay.
So yes, I have had similar situations where maybe, let's say mom and dad have been caring for, I don't want to offend anybody, but their
Yes.
special needs child,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, that's the correct word. Special needs. Yes.
Right. Their child with special needs their whole life. And then we have a situation where said son or daughter is 17, quote
Mm-hmm.
unquote, about to be a legal adult, right?
Yes.
But maybe in every other sense, he or she cannot handle the day-to-day responsibilities
Yes.
that might be expected of somebody that does not have those challenges. So for those parents, what we sometimes do is, in anticipation of the 18th birthday, we'll file a conservatorship
Okay.
case. And then in essence, what we're asking the court is, we're saying, hey, based on these conditions,
Mm-hmm.
my son or daughter is going to keep needing of my assistance
Yes.
beyond his or her 18th birthday. So it would be in his or her best interest for the court to name me conservator
Yes.
of his or her person. And then it's just those orders that would allow, a parent in that situation to continue to interface, let's say, with the medical professionals, or
Mm-hmm.
a lot of those clients are receiving services from agencies like Lanterman or other.
Yeah. Or
And
SSI.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Exactly. And having that documentation
Yes.
allows you as a parent with a child that continues to have special needs beyond the 18th birthday to navigate those systems
Wow.
pretty seamlessly.
Yes.
But another way that, a guardianship could come into play is if a parent or the parents unexpectedly pass away too. And with the conservatorship, yes, it could definitely help somebody transitioning, a young person into adulthood that still has these special needs to be maintained and cared for. But also, if someone that's 18 and over suffers a car accident or an accident on the job,
Yes.
and maybe doesn't have certain instruments in place. For example, heaven forbid, like if I was a construction worker, something fell on me, I'm in my 30s maybe, but now I'm suffering some sort of brain damage, but I don't have a health directive or financial power of attorney
Yes.
saying who could care for me if an emergency like that arose. Well, then my family might have to go to court and get some orders to be conservators of me. Well, maybe now there's a pending workers' compensation case,
Yes.
other cases, because now maybe I'm going to step into some money, but now I'm going to need help managing it.
Yes,
And then
of
now,
course.
right. So that's where conservatorship I've seen come into play as well.
Wow, that is just so interesting. My goodness. So, I want you to also share with our viewers what's the difference between a California will and a living trust?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Great question. I get that question a great deal. Um, yes. Both, important, important types of instruments. So I think most people, when they think of maybe making some sort of arrangements for when they pass away, probably what more naturally comes to mind, just because of what we've heard in the media or the information that's available to us, is probably a will. I
Okay.
need a will. I need to make a will. My Spanish speaking community, un testamento, So they're not entirely wrong. Um, the difference, though, so in California, if both of these instruments are used to create an estate plan, essentially a plan about what happens to our things once we pass away.
Yes.
That's really the essence behind both of these instruments. But in California, if we use a will-based estate plan only, where the will is the primary planning vehicle, depending on the assets, for example, if there is a family home, the will usually has to be probated, meaning that when the person passes away, so if I have a will-based estate plan, and I pass away, more than likely my executors are going to have to register that will with the court. And then the
Okay.
court is going to oversee that will. And then there's a series of fees that the estate would likely be subject to as a result of it being court supervised. So many people wish to avoid that. So in California, the tool to avoid those probate fees when we're administering a will, or worse yet, when we pass away without a will or a trust, when we pass away intestate without a plan. So we pass away with a will or intestate, it usually passes through probate, and then there's all these fees. When we use a trust as a primary planning vehicle, the trust usually does not have to be filed with the court. And I say usually, okay, qualifiers here,
Yes.
because these things can be challenged down the road, right? If someone sets up, if I set up a trust and then later there's facts that come out that I was in the hospital when I set it up and I was under medication and someone was holding my hand, that might be a situation where a trust might be challenged. And I mentioned that because some people say, well, isn't it, once it's set up, it's ironclad? I said, well, it depends. There still are these protections in place because sometimes there are, things that happen that maybe shouldn't have happened. And someone did not know what they were doing. But anyhow, if you do it the right way,
Yes.
right?
You don't have to worry about.
Correct.
And then the living trust part, like if you own a house, like I always hear, like in court, a will cannot save your house from probate, but a living trust can. So can you kind of elaborate a little bit on that?
Right. So I think maybe what people are trying to touch upon there is that the fact that the will has to be probated still subjects the estate to court proceedings and then thus court fees and just, the length of time that comes with that. Whereas the trust, because typically the trust is a private document, it's in essence an agreement set up by the person that passed away, where they get to list who's going to be in charge of managing their estate afterwards, who's going to receive their estate and in what percentage. The trust can be managed privately outside of court. That's the whole idea behind the trust. We want privacy. We don't want to subject the estate to the California court probate system. And whoever we've listed as successor trustees are going to have that authority, to do what they have to do with the real estate. If the terms of the trust include selling it, dividing it, they're going to be able to do all those things without having to go to court, which would just make the transition of assets, from one generation to the next, for example, assuming the person leaves it behind to their children or, lineal descendants, it's going to make that transition a lot more smoother than having to go to court.
Okay. That's very clear. So the good thing too is about you being a lawyer and in the field you're in is that you're bilingual. So you're able to help the Latino community that really don't comprehend why it's important to have, to create a living trust for their home. I always tell people, that just an example, you come from Mexico, you work hard, you have children here in California, and then you work so hard, don't have a living trust, you pass away, and now your kids have to experience the probate. Most of the time in the probate process, the children lose the property because they can't afford it. You know what I mean? Or they're not educated enough to try to fight to hold on to the property that their parents worked so hard to give to them, So when I hear you sharing your expertise, educating and empowering us through educating us, what's coming out of your mouth, right? I think it's very, very important for all of us, Americans, to make sure that we speak to somebody with your expertise. Like I always tell people, okay, you own a house, but you would go to your auntie that is a paralegal regarding a living trust. Well, it depends on what kind of paralegal she is. You know what I mean? If she's not in the field of a living trust, why would you go to the paralegal when you can go to somebody like yourself?
Right.
Or I sell life insurance. Why go to the bank? The bank just deal with money and trying to make capital within that company. Why wouldn't you come to me? I'm a life insurance agent,
right.
Where I can educate and empower you why it's important, or why you should get an IUL versus a term insurance, or why you should get both. You know what I mean? So I think it's important to be able to find the right people to help your situation, or help y'all situation. So how can our viewers find you on social media, your website? This is the time to shine, baby girl.
No, for sure. And all excellent points that you just brought up about, why would you go to your neighbor to set this up? I think at the end of the day, the bottom line is you should know who you're working with. Make sure you feel comfortable, right? I think this whole estate planning process is such a personalized, such an individualized process that you go through that you really need to feel comfortable
Yes.
with who you're working with, right? People share the most intimate details with me. And had they not shared those details, I would not be able to properly guide them or orient them
Yes.
with respect to maybe who should or should not be successor trustees. Or if we know there might be potential for conflict down the road, what I'm trying to do when I'm setting up an estate plan is minimize the likelihood of challenging that plan. Because the whole reason why my clients are coming to me is to keep their estate and their loved ones out of court. So we talk all these things through. I think when people go to places like their neighbors or
the website to print out papers.
Oh gosh, I have stories for days. Those websites listing other people as beneficiaries or giving the people to the cars. You see all types of things. Or worse yet, the documents were never actually executed. There's just so I get it. It is an investment. So yes, do your research, do your homework, feel comfortable. Make sure you know that the services being provided are comprehensive in exchange for what you're getting, right? So I put all that out there because it's so important. But yeah, with respect to how people can reach me, I'm here in the South Bay, but I serve folks up and down the state of California. I'm licensed in California. So the firm is physically housed in Old Town Torrance, just down the street.
Yes,
a lot of clients in Inglewood and around the area. You could find me on Facebook. You can find me on my webpage, Instagram, at Teresa Gutierrez Law. And the best phone number is 310-503-6492. Y hablamos español.
Yay!
Yeah.
Woohoo! I am so happy that we connected. I'm actually also happy because if it wasn't for Google, you know what I mean?
Good old Google.
Yeah, that good Google of resources, because a lot of people, tell me we looking for somebody that is not so expensive, So I want to be able to have the resources for different people, and I'm so happy that I was, contacted you. We definitely vibed over the phone, and today we're here. And this is how we network. This is how we build friendships. This is how we help the community together give me your hand, as working together to benefit, others of winning in life. Yes. You know what I mean? So this is what you call woman empowerment. This is what you call Latina supporting Latinas. And this is what you call amazing. Well, this is Raina Carrillo with Purpose and Passion signing out with Luxemedia Studios in the city of Inglewood. Hey!